Well, next up in Undercurrent, there have been some accusations of misleading behaviour at one of our central learning institutions. Alexandra Mollo has more.
Central TAFE receives more than 20,000 students every year, offering courses and traineeships for local and international students of WA. But the notion of TAFE as a prestigious institution doesn't seem to appeal to all TAFE students. Robert King is one of them, a mature-age student who feels deceived after 80% of his class failed an assessment despite being told they would pass.
So the course started at the end of July. This was the first written assessment in anaesthetic technology. At the start, our first anaesthetic theory assessment, we were led to believe that we would all be fine. And they said, if you have attended and listened, you will have no problem during the assessment. Except that somewhere like about 80% of the class failed. Now that would tend to suggest either that their belief in our knowledge was wrong, or we had all not been paying attention. That's the only two conclusions I can come up with. Now, they do have a policy regarding resits, which is great, so you don't have to wait a whole year to have another stab. So that 80% of the class, give or take 1 or 2%, got to do a resit. But the problem was, in my case anyway, and I don't know how many other people, it never recorded as a reset. It showed as a pass on the first submission. Now, that, to my way of thinking, should have been recorded as being a second submission. But it is recorded as being satisfactory on the first submission. That to me is wrong. It's unfair to the minority of class who did actually genuinely pass on the first attempt. They should be recognised for their achievements, and you have to ask, why do they do it? Why do they dress up a resubmitted work as a first attempt? The TAFE has a great list of so-called core values, honesty, integrity, all these sort of things. Well, surely if they hold those values so dear, they would be a little bit more accurate in recording what is or isn't resits. My real issue was why, at least in my paper, and I didn't see other people's papers, why a resit would be dressed up as a first submission.
Although Robert accepts his failure, he says it's imperative for the institution to ensure that higher education standards are consistently met.
Well, I certainly subsequently found out that they were not particularly open to feedback, and certainly not critical feedback. Yes, they are a difficult organisation to deal with. I make allegations and they choose not to deny them.
It is impossible for us to respond to the particular issue you refer to in your emails. Despite our many efforts to speak to Mr. King at a time that is convenient to him, no complaint has actually been lodged with our institute, and we do not have the full details from Mr. King. Now,
I would have thought if I were making claims that they thought were untrue, they would say that is untrue, and they don't. They don't deny the claims they make.
But despite several attempts to contact TAFE representatives to provide their side of the story, they preferred not to respond to any of the allegations.
With regard to the request, we do not feel that a TV interview is the way to resolve this particular case. As a state training provider, we naturally have a formal complaints procedure in place. This is a legal requirement.
I attempted to get in touch, or I made it clear that I wanted to make a representation to the Governing Council of the TAFE, and they have not facilitated that. 80% of us had failed when we were being led to believe that we were going to succeed.
But students who preferred not to be interviewed believe that perhaps teachers are not the ones to blame, highlighting that TAFE is a tertiary level institution and therefore all students are expected to perform independently and without the safe net provided by lower education levels. Alexandra Mollo, Undercurrent.